Welcome everyone, I'm the Depressed Eeyore, and this is Arkham Horror the card game. We're going to be doing Dunwich Legacy on easy difficulty with no taboo. Um, as always, I've been trying to do redoing some of these old campaigns with investigators I haven't played before, or at least not on camera, and just trying to get through all the female investigators. I did attempt to do this with a different pair, and unfortunately they didn't do so well, and so I tried to use them in pretty much anyone I have trouble using, either build wise or me sucking, or both. I eventually will just take them to do Night of the Zealot and just show them off and then move on. I find that's the best case for my sanity. But with this duo, I'm hoping I can actually do an actual full campaign. So let's see how that's going to go. So the pair we're going to be going with here is going to be Akachi Oniel and Safina Rousseau. And as you can see already, both of them will start with 2 mental trauma. So, Akachi. Akachi is an investigator I did try playing at for a previous campaign. I believe I tried to use her in Dream Eaters and ended up scrapping those recordings and just using a different team entirely. But I got a little bit of experience with her. The deck I'm going to be using is based off an Arkham DB deck that is, I think it's like something called like the 5 Elements or something like that. And it was really kind of interesting, so I'm hoping to try it and do better with it. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, Akachi Oniel, the shaman. She's a sorcerer. She has 5 willpower, 2 intelligence, 3 strength, and 3 agility. Her special ability is your assets with usage charges. Enters play with 1 additional charge on them. There are a lot of items there's a lot of assets in the game that do have charges, but the general ones that are very common are spells. So things like shriveling and all that all use charges. So essentially, it's essentially like if someone had the ability where they use guns and they get an extra bullet. That's essentially what Akachi gets, but for spells, of course. Then her Elder Sign is +1, and you can add a charge to an asset with usage charge you control. So a way to recharge your charges. I will journey to the lands beyond. I do not fear them. She has 6 health and 8 sanity. Her deck building is 30 cards, Mystic 0 to 5, Neutral 0 to 5, cards with usage charges, level 0 to 4, and then Occult level 0. The purpose of the Occult level 0 is there are certain Seeker cards that you can actually get, and they eventually become spells that get charges. But of course, you first got to get access to Occult 0, so you can actually, do whatever you need to do the research part, and then upgrade them into something else. All right. She also has to have Spirit Speaker, which is her exclusive, Anger Spirits, which is her exclusive weakness, and then a random basic weakness. As a young girl in Nigeria, Akachi became used to being set apart. Her habits of chattering away at thin air and secluding herself from other children led her village to believe she was mad. Her village Dibia was the first to see her true potential. He believed Akachi was marked by the spirits for greatness, and he taught her how to commune with them to her advantage. Under his tutelage, Akachi grew into a wise young leader, respected not just in her village, but in every community she aided. Now she meets her destiny head on, seeking out unnatural troubles that only her knowledge can stop. All right. So I do have 2 arcane researches, which is why she has the 2 mental trauma, which will just make it cheaper to upgrade spells. Keyword is upgrade. If you are buying a new spell, it does not apply to that first purchase. So generally what you want to do is if it's something that can be upgraded as well, you want to buy it first and then upgrade it, because then it becomes much cheaper. All right. As for the deck itself, let's go ahead and go over her exclusive Spirit Speaker, sorry. It has a dash in the middle, which means it's actually one word. Envoy of the Elusi, or Elusai. It's a 2-cost asset, a ritual. Takes no slots. It is can be committed for a wild, a intelligence, or a book, or a willpower. As a lightning bolt, you can exhaust this to choose an asset with usage charges, and you can either return it to your hand or move all charges from the asset to your resource pool as resources and discard that asset. So this is a way you can cash in certain spells that you don't really want to use anymore or you want to replace. or this is a way to return a spell back into your hand and then replay it with max charges again with the +1 on top of it. Her exclusive weakness is Angered Spirits. This will go into your threat area. You can exhaust it's a task, by the way. As a lightning bolt, you can exhaust a spell asset to move 1 charge from that asset to Angered Spirits. And when the game ends, if Angered Spirit has fewer than 4 charges on it, you suffer 1 physical trauma. So what's kind of interesting about this is this stays in play forever. So once you draw it, you'll never risk drawing it again. And getting 4 charges on this isn't too bad. If you have enough spell assets out in play, you can get this done in one go. Because the only thing that's restricting it is the assets themselves being exhausted. Otherwise, you kind of have to just gradually get the charges over there, essentially. Her basic weakness is Dark Pact, which I feel like I've been drawing a lot more often lately. But it's a Pact 2-cost event, campaign mode only. It deals 2 damage to an investigator at your location. You can use this on yourself. And forced when the game ends, if Dark Pact is still in your hand, you must remove it from your deck and then add Price of Failure and add it to your deck. So Price of Failure, what that does is the moment you draw it, the resolution effect is you take 2 damage, 2 horror, and you put a doom on the agenda, and it can force it to advance. And once that has been resolved, it gets removed from the game, and Dark Pact gets put into your, I believe, into your discard. So yeah, essentially the idea is you generally it's going to cost you an action, and you'll do 2 damage to something. And if you don't do it, you're going to get punished. You'll potentially be punished much harsher in the future. Maybe not in the next scenario, but maybe in the following one, because eventually it will stay in your deck until you draw the Price of Failure again. Anyway, as for the deck itself, much like most Mystics, it's kind of a flex deck. But what's kind of nice about Akachi in particular is she does have 3 fight. So she does have some ways to actually use, actual weapons if she doesn't want to use her spells, for example. So where do we even start? There's a lot of spells. I do have 2 arcane initiates to get spells out faster, and to essentially act as card draw. We got Alchemical Transmutation, which is a 1-cost spell, which has 3 charges. Do note, every time I say the number of charges, add 1 to it, because Akachi. This does take an arcane slot, and you can exhaust it and spend a charge to do a Will 1 test. And for each point you succeed by, you can gain 1 resource up to a maximum of 3. If you draw any symbols, of course, you will take a damage. So this is kind of an economy, a fancy way of doing economy. It's not exactly efficient, because you have to spend an action to play it, and then spend an action to actually do the effect. But it can be kind of nice in situations where you maybe want to fill in arcane slots for whatever reason. Or in the case of Akachi, she just wants to have charges on hand for something else. But this is going to be something that's going to be filtered out pretty quickly. We do have Blood Pact, which is a spell. The only reason I have this in the deck right now is to upgrade it. And there we go. Because the upgrade version actually becomes permanent, and then you don't have to deal with it. But the way both versions work is you can add Doom to Blood Pact, and then you can get a boost to either Willpower or Fight. Very useful in conjunction with something like Moonlight Ritual, which of course can remove Doom from a card you control. Also, Moonlight Ritual is of course a spell. We do have a Cat Mask. This is just mainly just to get a little bit of boost with Fight and Willpower, and she can actually make use of the Fight, which is good. Speaking of the fighting, she does have Dragon Pulse. This is a weapon I always like trying to play with, and I always find myself struggling with it. So I'm hoping this will go a little bit better. So the way Dragon Pulse works is it's a 2-handed melee weapon. It costs 3 to play, does commit for a fight. And when you play it, you will get an additional arcane slot, so you'll have 3 at that point. As an action, you can fight with it, and you'll get +1 fight for this attack for each arcane slot that is filled. So, in general, since you get a free arcane slot, if you have all of them filled, you'll have +3 fight, which is pretty good. If you have at least 2 arcane slots filled, it also does +1 damage. It does take quite a bit to get this set up, but once you get it up and running, and even when your spells run out of charges, they usually stay out in play anyway. So Dragon Pole is just kind of a way to do some extra work here. Really, the big draw for this weapon in particular for Akachi is that additional arcane slot. We do have some fearlesses, which will help try to mitigate the starting trauma we have. We have some guts, just kind of get a little extra boost on willpower. We do have Holy Rosaries for some soak and more willpower. Rite of Seeking, again, investigating, it's also a spell. Shriveling for fighting, it's also a spell. Most of these spells are going to be replaced with other spells that are a bit more flexible for Akachi, but we'll talk about that when that happens. String of Curses, of course, is a fantastic spell. We got a couple of those going. And as far as economy, besides the economical transmutations, which I don't intend on using, we do have Uncage the Souls, which can be used to play spells and rituals at the reduced cost. We do have some Unexpected Courages, just for a little extra, just in case I need to do other skill tests. She does have 3 agility, which is nice. She, of course, has Ward of Protections. No, we don't actually have Deny Existence in this deck, which is kind of interesting. We also have Torrent of Power, which is a practice skill. Commits for 1 wild, but as an additional cost, you can spend up to 3 charges among assets you control. So, for example, we could take them from our chemical transmutation. And for every charge you remove from this, it will add a willpower and a wild to it. So this could potentially become, with 3 charges, can become a Promise of Power without the curse. Or it could be a situation where your willpower is going to be ridiculously insane, because this can give it up to like +7 willpower. It's interesting. Probably only Akachi really benefits from this, but it is, like I said, kind of interesting. And that's probably it on the skill side. Yep, that's pretty much it for the deck. So yeah, a lot of spells. What really is going to set this deck apart from other Mystics is what it kind of upgrades into. So we'll hopefully get to see how that plays out. Anyway, our other character is Safina, who I don't have any experience playing. She is a rogue. She is the painter. She's an artist. She has 4 willpower, 2 intelligence, 2 strength, and 4 agility. Forced, when you would draw your opening hand, you draw 13 cards instead. Choose up to 5 events to place beneath this card and keep 8 cards as your opening hand. Discard the rest. You cannot mulligan. So this is very interesting. Usually, of course, whenever you do your starting hand, you draw 5 cards. Obviously, discarding and drawing again if you draw a weakness. And then you would do a mulligan with that 5-card hand. But in this case, you skip that second step and you just draw 13 cards. Of course, you'd still discard and redraw any weaknesses you get. And you also get to place a bunch of events down. And what you can do with these events is, as an action, you can choose an event beneath her and draw it. This does not provoke an attack opportunity. So this can kind of be sort of a, what do you call it? Stick to the plan, but with events, for example. But of course, stick to the plan you can do as a lightning bolt. But in this, you have to spend an action. Of course, there is the Elder Sign effect, which is +3, which is pretty high. You may choose an event beneath this card and draw it. So this is a way to get it for free. She does have 5 health and 9 sanity. I do have In the Thick of It for this deck. I'm choosing Mental Trauma, so that's why she's starting with 2 horror. 2 of the experience I'm spending on Karen's Obol, which the Ferryman's Pay. It's an item, relic, asset, permanent, exceptional. That's why it costs 2. When earning experience during the resolution of the scenario, if you are not defeated during the scenario, you'll get 2 additional experience. And if you were defeated during that scenario, you are killed. When you play with other people, be careful about using this card, because it does put a lot more strain on the party, the rest of the group, because even if you say you'll take care of yourself, if you fail to take care of yourself and get yourself killed, that not only sets yourself back, but it sets the rest of the group back. Personally, I just want to get more used to using Karen's Obol, because it is a very good card. Generally, in my opinion, even though it's risky, if you are going to use Karen's Obol, you should start with it. So in that case, you generally have to use In the Thick of It to actually start with this. Mainly just because if you spend 2 experience after the first scenario just to get this out, you've already set yourself back 4 experience essentially. But in this way, obviously the risk here is I start with less, health and sanity overall. But this lets me start getting that +2 additional experience as soon as possible. Majority of my rogue decks, or anyone that has access to rogue cards, generally are going to be using this now, just so I can get, used to doing upgrades and things like that. All right. Besides that, let's go ahead and take a look at the opposite side of the card. Deck size 33. Rogue cards 0 to 5, neutral cards 0 to 5, and Mystic 0 to 2. Pretty straightforward. She does have decent agility and willpower, so she can kind of work with both sides of those cards. She has to have 3 copies of the Painted World, which is her exclusive, 1 copy of Stars of Hyades, which is her weakness, and then we have 1 random basic weakness. Even when she was young, Safina's alluring paintings drew the eyes of many. When an art collector from Paris visited Tahiti and discovered Safina, he offered to support her work in exchange for her services creating imitations. Her keen eye and steady hand were perfect for the task, and Safina found the art of forgery to be more engaging and captivating than she imagined. Her most recent work came from an anonymous stranger with deep pockets, who tasked her with recreating a panorama of a strange alien city. When she completed the final stroke, she was sent hurtling into the world of the painting. She only barely survived the ordeal, passing out from exhaustion. When she awoke in her gallery, she knew it had been real. Alright, so like I said, I have no experience playing this character, but generally what most people do for deck building is try to get as many events into this deck as possible, because you want to maximize your starting hand, because you don't get a mulligan for this. So you want to try to ensure as best as possible that you'll have 5 events in your hand. Now, do note, where is her? There it is. Her exclusive is the Painted World, which is a spell and an event. It has a dash for a cost. It can be committed for a willpower, agility, and a wild. And it cannot be placed under Safina. So, despite she has 3 of these in her deck, she can't actually put these under the deck, and there's a reason for that. What you can do with this card is you can play it as an exact copy of a non-exceptional event that is beneath Safina Rizzo, and then you remove this card from the game instead of discarding it. So, for example, if you happen to have a Ward of Protection face down underneath her, then all these Painted Worlds could be a potential another Ward of Protection, which can be kind of nice. Could also be, I don't know, another easy mark. In fact, you can treat if you happen to have all 3 Painted Worlds in your hand and an easy mark underneath her, you could play all your Painted Worlds as easy marks and, get a bunch of resources and cards that way. Her weakness is Star of Hyades. It's a curse. Randomly choose an event beneath Safina Rizzo and remove it from the game. If you cannot, take 1 damage and 1 horror. And if your deck has 5 or more cards in it, you shuffle it back into your deck instead of discarding it. That is the most difficult, probably the worst part about Safina, is her weakness does shuffle back into her deck. So not only did it eat a draw and eat a card or potentially hurt her, it's going to be constantly being recurred in her deck, unless you can cycle through fast enough. So it's very, very brutal. Granted, this also means you generally don't want to get rid of your cards that are underneath her, because unless you want to constantly take damage and horror because of this. Like I said, it's pretty devastating. I'm not sure what else I could say about it. Her basic weakness is Dread Curse. I think we've had this before, but I don't remember. Revelation, add 5 curse tokens to the chaos bag, and that's it. Curses are always rough, but they're besides that, it just eats a draw, really. Obviously, I have the worst luck when it comes to curse tokens, and they usually come and try to wreck me regardless. But compared to other weaknesses that I could have gotten, it could obviously be worse. Anyway, also one thing to note about the Painted World is it does copy everything exactly. So if your event happens to be fast, like for example Honed Instinct here, you can actually play them as fast cards, which is kind of helpful. All right. So let's go ahead and so a lot of her events, and she does have access to Mystic cards. So I do have 2 Arcane Initiates, so I can cycle through and get spells. Her Painted World is a spell card, so it's very useful in this case. As for spells, she does have some Deny Existences, Drain Essences, Drawn to the Flame. Or actually, not spells. As for her events, we have Deny Existences, Drain Essences, both of which are spells. Drawn to the Flame, which is not a spell, but it's an event, and you can get clues with it. We, of course, got Easy Marks, which are not spells, but are events. We got Elusive, which is a tactic, which can be used to get disengaged from everyone and get, move someplace else. We, of course, got a few Holy Rosaries just for additional willpower and soak. We, of course, got Rite of Seekings for investigating. We do have Shriveling for fighting. We do also have British Bulldogs, which are guns which you can use your agility with. and I can also potentially get it out for free if I fail a parlay check with Drain Essence. I also do have a couple of feast kits, where you can investigate using your agility, and if you succeed, you can actually gain resources back. So that's kind of a way to get some additional income from that. We do have Think on Your Feet, which is just a way to get away from a location if an enemy spawns on top of you. And then the rest of this is, let's see what else we got. We of course got String of Curses, which with Painted World we could potentially have a lot more of them. We do have Uncaged Souls, which are of course events, which you can use as additional economy to get out other things. And then of course, what else do we have? I think that's everything. Yep, I think oh, I do have Spectral Razors for just some, if I need to fight with a pinch. With 4 willpower and 2 fight, that's essentially fighting at 6, which is not too bad. And I can do 3 damage to a non-elite, which is always good. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, stuff it full of as many events as possible and just work from there. All right. And with that, that is everything. I'm hoping this will go well. As for what we're going to be starting with this time around, we're going to be starting with extracurricular activity instead of the house always wins to change things up. Supposedly, if you start with extracurricular activity, there's more opportunities to get experience points, so I'm going to be focusing on that front. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and call it here. I am the Depressed Eeyore. This was Arkham Horror the card game, the Dunwich Legacy, and I will see you guys next time.